It was a long, exhausting period. The Great Ice Age held the Earth in its grip, and although mammoths, those majestic shaggy giants, were made for the cold, this winter seemed endless. Snow lay in a thick, unyielding layer, covering the familiar pastures. The grass that had fed the herd for millennia was now buried deep beneath the ice. At the head of the herd walked Kaya, an old, wise female with tusks that curved almost to the ground. Her hide was cracked by the wind, and her deep, calm eyes had witnessed more than one harsh winter. But this one was different. The young mammoth calves, huddling close to their mothers, were thin, and even the powerful bull males looked weary. Hunger had become a constant companion. One morning, as the first rays of the sun barely pierced the heavy gray clouds, the herd awoke to an unusual noise. The ground trembled. At first, barely noticeable, then stronger and stronger, until the ice beneath their feet began to crack with a loud groan. Kaya lifted her head, her trunk tense, searching the air for danger. Kaya knew this smell. It was the scent of fear, the scent of change carried by the earth itself. The trembling grew into a powerful jolt, and massive blocks of ice broke away from the glacier on the horizon with a thunderous crack that echoed for miles. The herd panicked. Some of the young mammoths began to scatter, but Kaya let out a mighty roar that forced them to stop and regroup. She felt this was not just an earthquake. It was something more. The sky in the north began to darken. At first, it was a thin strip that quickly widened, swallowing the light. The cold wind, which had so far blown from the north, now carried fine, sharp ice crystals that stung painfully against their hides. The old mammoths, those who remembered the tales of the Great Freezing, knew something terrible was coming. The glacier, which had seemed immovable for so long, had begun to move. It moved slowly but relentlessly, like a giant white wave devouring everything in its path. Trees snapped like matchsticks, rocks crumbled, and the ground groaned under the pressure. Mammoths, though massive, were helpless before such a force of nature. Kaya led the herd south, to where the snow was a little thinner, where perhaps there was hope of finding shelter. They walked for many hours, with barely any rest, pressing on through the blizzard that grew ever stronger. Their legs sank into the deep snow, and their lungs burned from the icy air. When they reached a small hill that rose slightly above the snowy plain, Kaya sensed that the herd's strength was nearly gone. The calves could barely stand on their feet. One of the old males, AK, who had only a single tusk, came up to Kaya. His eyes were clouded, yet within them burned the fire of knowledge. I remember the stories of the ancestors, Kaya, he rasped. When the sky grows angry and the earth trembles, the great ice comes. It drives us south to the bright place. There, the ground never freezes and the grass is always green. Kaya knew of the bright place, a legend passed down from generation to generation. A place where the sun never hid and the cruel frosts could not reach. But none of them had ever seen it. Did it truly exist? Or was it just a tale told to mammoth calves? Suddenly, the sky split with a deafening crack, and a massive meteor, wreathed in fire, cut a blazing path across the horizon before vanishing somewhere far to the south, leaving behind a trail of burning light. It was no ordinary meteor, it was an omen. The herd panicked again, but Kaya, gazing at the meteor's trail, felt a strange surge of determination. This was the path to the bright place AK had spoken of. The decision was made. They would move south, following the light left behind by the meteor. The journey was unbearably hard. The glacier advanced, driving before it cold winds and blizzards. They had to cross frozen rivers that groaned under their weight and climb slippery hills. Several calves perished from cold and exhaustion, and their mothers lingered long over them, mourning the loss before their kin, with gentle touches of their trunks, urged them to move on. Days blended into one endless march. Hunger was unbearable, but hope, faint though it was, kept them going. Kaya still led the way, her wise eyes searching for signs of the bright place. And then, when it seemed that all strength was gone and their hearts were ready to give up, they saw it. On the horizon, through the mist and snow, appeared a touch of green. Bright, lush green that stood in stark contrast to the endless whiteness of ice. And above it shone the sun, warm and welcoming. It was a valley, sheltered, protected from the fierce winds by tall cliffs that bore the marks of ancient eruptions. And most importantly, it was free of snow. Here, grass grew thick and green, and in the distance trees with broad leaves could be seen. The air was unusually warm and filled with the scent of freshness. This was the bright place. The herd, mustering the last of its strength, rushed forward. The calves, forgetting their exhaustion, began to run across the soft grass, while the adults gladly buried their trunks in the lush greenery. Kaya stood apart, watching her herd. She saw life returning to their eyes. They had survived. They had found refuge from the frozen world that had swallowed the rest of the planet. The mammoths who had reached this valley were the lucky exceptions. Perhaps their group was one of the last on Earth. But in this valley, surrounded by mountains and warmed by a strange heat, they had found a new home. They were the last, but they were alive. Their struggle was over. A new life was beginning. And with every mouthful of fresh grass, with every ray of warm sun, they felt that the future, though uncertain, was possible.